Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon when you're watching this webinar. Again, this is Dave Nagel. Very excited to continue on the webinar series with my friends and colleagues at Fremont Unified School District. Now we're looking at, as we've gone through our course teams, example, we had the why for the rationale for priority standards, and then you've had a chance to look at some specific to your individual disciplines. Now it's how we can use what's called the prioritizing standard matrix as a tool to begin the process of determining priority standards for your specific course team and subject matter. So we're going to jump right in. Hopefully you have this working handout in front of you that addresses webinar 2 using the prioritizing standard matrix, and then the next one, district examples using the prioritizing standard matrix. Hopefully you have the working handout with you. Our success criteria for these two webinars back to back is to understand how to determine priority standards based on using the specific criteria of endurance, leverage, and readiness. And I'm going to add on to that just a little bit in this webinar. And then determine a potential course of action for your PLC, department, or collaborative team to use that criteria to begin selecting priority standards. So I'm going to go back to something I mentioned in the first webinar, the idea of an accordion model. What's critical is we all could not come together, every biology teacher, every English 9 teacher, even English 9-10 teacher, and sit down and develop our list of priority standards. But if we all know what the criteria is, we can have a certain group of individuals that could eventually come together and use that criteria and send it out for feedback for their peers. But that will also be able to start, that work also starts happening at the individual course teams, and we come together and collaborate very tightly, and then we spread out, but we never completely touch. So in our accordion model, we're going to come together sometimes, we're going to spread out, but when we spread out, we don't get too far away from each other. The biology teacher is accountable to the chemistry teacher. If biology is a course that's taught at the 9th grade level, there's accountability between the 8th grade teachers and that individual. And so as I mentioned before, vertical alignment and these examples that you'll see here is critical. It's critical that it happens here. The teachers come together and they're collaborating around determining their priority standards with those specific filters, making the decisions of what they feel is a priority or supporting, and then doesn't have to be put on a wall in chart paper like this. What I find powerful when I work with districts who do that, we can easily see some gaps and overlaps. And again, talked about our 4 criteria many times, so I'm just going to move right in to the matrix which you have in front of you with your handout. This is an example where we would take a grade level, for example, 9th grade or 10th grade, put our course and content, biology, English, and then which standards, which are our priority standards, and then we put them through the filter. Can that standard be applied to life skill? Will it stand the test of time? Will it be assessed on our high-stakes test? It's possible we might not know that if we haven't looked at the assessment at a deep level, or we haven't gotten deep into our next generation science assessment yet, which some states have not done so. Then we dig into readiness. Can be applied to other areas. Will it build confidence into that next grade level? What is really, really critical for pre-algebra into algebra 1? Does our current assessment results support emphasis? This is where it could change somewhat from year to year. Do we see students, for the most part, this is an area where our data and our evidence are showing that they're struggling there, that they need that. And then leverage, does it stand the test of time? That last column is where we would look at the number of checks we have, and if we have 4 or more, it would be a priority standard. Certainly 5 or more guarantees it's a priority standard. And then we can list it as what we might call a power standard, and then determine later how we prioritize it. So a term that Larry used early in the process of developing the important standards was the term power standard. But then what's critical is we need to prioritize what standards are really essential and in what order. And in the next webinar, I'm going to walk us through some specific examples that I've worked with districts and how they filtered through this matrix to make those determinations. Again, by the end of this webinar and the subsequent one, 2A, you'll be able to understand how to determine priority standards using the criteria, and then hopefully start to think, what is a course of action that we can use the matrix just for our PLC or the collaborative department or course team to use a criteria in selecting priority standards. That second criteria point will be emphasized more in webinar 2A, which is coming shortly. As always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me at dave.nagel@corwinlearning.net. As I've mentioned on every webinar before, if you have a thought or a question that you would like to go deeper and not just have email dialogue, please don't hesitate to pick up the phone anytime and call. or perhaps schedule a call with me or even a webinar like this with possibly your PLC or even your course team. As always, thank you for your participation. I look forward to talking with you on the next webinar.